Good afternoon, my dear judge and my dear batchmates. So today we are here to speak about word recognition and speech perception as the main heading. So the presenters today are me, Asai Begum, Vishwani, Ishara, Basala is absent today, and it is Hajara and Naguri. So yes, to move forward, the topic which we have selected today is word recognition, speech perception, localization and lateralization, how language is received and produced in the mind, universal grammar, and conclusion. And finally, we will have a question and answering session where you can ask your doubts. Yes, to move forward with our PPT, the first topic we are going to discuss today is word recognition. So what is word recognition? Word recognition is the process which helps a person to identify a word, a written word, and to comprehend it. Now, for example, now you see a word called apple. How do you understand? Now, A-P-P-L-E, how do you know it is apple? The way you understand that word is only called as word recognition. So, this word recognition process happens in the left ventral visual cortex around the falciparum gyrus. That means you can see the picture behind the primary visual cortex. There only the word recognition process happens. Yes, to understand this word recognition, now you would have studied in the earlier PPTs, they spoke about models and how this word recognition happens. But now we are going to learn how this this mental lexical takes place. Yes. So first we'll see what is lexical access. Lexical access is defined as the process of entering the words in our mind. Okay, the vocabulary is entered in our mind as a definition, not only as a word. Now, when I tell apple, not only apple comes to mind, the definition, the color, or sometimes it can be stored as a technique or equipment you use, the Apple phone. So, all these things can be stored in your mind. So, this is only called the lexical access, the process how an individual identifies words in our mental lexicon. So, to understand this statement, we need to break this down more. What is mental lexicon? Mental lexicon is a systematic organization where the brain stores the lexical entries. Okay, it is like a library where lots of books are stored in a proper order. So, what are lexical entries? Lexical entries, like I told you earlier, that these are the information regarding one lexical item. So, according to Levelt, he states that there are two types of lexical items. One, it is according to semantic feature. Second one is according to its phonological feature. So, lexical storage is where these lexical items, now I told you there are two types, how this is stored. Now, when you go to library, you know, just books are not thrown away everywhere. It is arranged in a specific order. That is the order how our words are arranged in our mind. To look forward in the picture, this is how the brain works. Now, this is not only, we are not targeting only word recognition, but all the how the words are recognized. First, you perception, you get a word, you see a word, and then your brain understands there is something like this A-P-P-L-E, and then it goes to your brain and you identify the rules, the phonologic, what is the pronunciation, and whether it's a noun, verb, and finally the word gives out as the outcome with the stimulus. Now you get a stimuli, you identify that you need to recognize that word, and finally you put out that word. That is only simply called as the process of what is word recognition. Now Nandini will take over what is speech perception.
Now, let's have a look into the speech perception. So, it identifies how we identify or perceive the sounds of languages. So, here it says about how we identify or perceive sounds of the language. It hears to our ears, and we have to perceive it through our brain, and then we can identify the speech. When it comes to the babies, they are sensitive to speech sounds. That means if they are crying and if we are making some sounds towards them, they makes them calm and quiet. Through the exposure, the innate perceptual ability can be developed. Moving on to the theories of speech perception, here I mentioned motor theory, direct realistic theory, trace theory, coherent theory, and the neighborhood activation model. So moving on to the motor theory, gestural commands. While looking at the person, throughout the gestural commands, they can map acoustic speech inputs. And then the vocal tracks gestures are involved in motor theory. It is essential to have a connection between auditory motor speech system. And then the Broca's aphasia is Broca's aphasia causes to damage for the motor speech system. When it comes to the direct realistic theory, it involves gestures of the speaker. And then when we perceive an object from the external world, we perceive an object in the external world perceived directly without the intermediaries. So moving on to the trace module, it is based on the principles of interactive activation. It contains a network of units which helps to dynamic processing structure. And then the trace module deals with short segments of real speech and recognized phonics. And then the trace module, it stimulates the influence of lexical information.
I'll be speaking on localization and lateralization. Localization of function is the idea that certain functions have certain locations within the brain. For example, Broca's area, Wernicke's area. Broca's area is it lies in the left frontal lobe, and if this area is damaged, one may have difficulty in moving the tongue or facial expression of producing sounds. But a person can read and understand but have difficulties in writing and speaking. Wernicke's area is one of the two parts of the cerebral cortex which are linked to speech. Moving on to lateralization. Lateralization is the fact that the two halves of the brain are functioning different and that each hemisphere has functional specialization. So the brain is split into half and each side is known as hemispheres. The two hemispheres are connected by the corpus callosum. Over the left side of the brain is responsible for language and speech, while the right side of the brain is a large part interpreting visual information. Each hemisphere has four lobes: frontal lobes, parietal lobes, temporal lobe, occipital lobes. Frontal lobe lies with behaviors, words, and language. Parietal lobe lies with interpreting language and word. Occipital lobe interprets in vision, movement, large movement, colors. Temporal lobes lies in language and hearing and memory. Thank you. Moving on to Ishara.
I'm Ishara. My part is how language is received and produced in the mind. So, then first we will move to how language is received in the mind. There are two parts. The first part is how language is received in the mind. We all know language is received and produced in the mind through a complex cognitive process involving various brain regions and functions. It can be divided as 7 parts. The first one, it is a process which involves various brain regions and functions. There are 7 parts. We can talk with them. First one is perception, then second one is primary processing, language area, then syntax and semantics, memory and context, and integration, and finally production of the word. Then first we will move to the perception. The perception means language language input is received through sensory organs like our eyes and ears as written or spoken language. These signals are
converted into neural impulses and sent into the brain. Then the brain primary sensory areas such as the auditory cortex for spoken language and the visual cortex for written language process these signals recognizing basic features like sound, patterns or visual characters. That is called primary processing. Then after that, the Broca's area, it is responsible for language production, and Wernicke's area, it is responsible for language comprehension. Becomes active, then these areas help decode and interpret the linguistic elements. That is called language area. Then after that, the brain processes the syntactic structures and the assigned meaning to the word and phrases into the sentence. That means we can call it as syntax and semantics. Then after that, the brain uses memory and contextual information to understand the meaning of the word and phrases, linking them to prior knowledge and experiences. Then finally, the brain integrates all these aspects to form a coherent understanding of the language input. Then finally, the production, the brain language areas are engaged to formulate a response which is then transmitted to the motor areas for speech or writing. Then the brain language processing is a highly dynamic and interconnected process that continues to be a topic ongoing research. Then we will move to next slide. As Hajra said, the brain has two parts, the left hemisphere and right hemisphere. In the frontal lobe, there is a Broca's area, which is first for human speech, and the function of the Broca's area is production of speaking and writing. Then also Wernicke's area, it is located in the temporal lobe. The understanding the language is controlled by the Wernicke's area. Then we will move to the next slide. The brain. Now we can understand how the brain produce how the brain produce the language in our mind. There are 6 concepts. First one is conceptualization, then mental lexicon, then syntax and grammar, and after that phonological encoding, then enunciation, planning and motor exploration. Then all these processes are done in the Broca's and Wernicke's area. So we will move to the Vassala's video to universal grammar.
Hi everyone, I hope you are all doing well. I want to start by apologizing for not being able to join you in person for today's presentation. Due to a personal reason, I couldn't be there today, and I'm sorry if you hear any background noise. I'm actually recording this video while I'm on the road. Okay, now let's dive into the topic that I was supposed to cover, the universal grammar. As you all know, our batch is like a little world of its own with people from diverse backgrounds and languages. Some of you come from a single speaking background just like me, while others have Tamil or English as their first language. Now, you might be wondering how this diversity in our batch connects to the topic I am about to discuss. Well, it's actually quite fascinating. Universal grammar is the idea that no matter where we come from or what language we speak, there's a common foundation in our brain that helps us understand and learn language. And universal grammar is an idea put forward by Noam Chomsky, explores how we naturally learn and use language. In brief, it suggests that we are born with an inbuilt language learning device. Think of it like a natural language decoder in our brains. This tool helps us absorb the grammar rules and language patterns we are exposed to during our early years. Whether it's English, Tamil, Sinhalese, Japanese, or any other language, our minds are like sponges for language during formative years. This process happens so effortlessly so that the researchers call it the critical period. Universal grammar has stirred up a lot of debates and studies in the world of linguistics. People are curious by how we can effortlessly pick up languages. And guess what? Understanding universal grammar can completely revolutionize how we teach and learn languages. When we realize that everyone has an innate language learning ability, we can fine-tune our teaching techniques to make the process even smoother. In the end, universal grammar highlights the deep connections between all languages and how skilled we are at adopting and communicating across cultures. So that's about universal grammar. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I'm not here to answer your questions, so I'm sorry for that, and I really appreciate your understanding. Thank you. Hi everyone.
One more to go, right?
I'm Vishwani, so I'm doing the conclusion. So our conclusion to our presentation, word recognition refers as the cognitive process of identifying and comprehending written words. So word recognition refers the individuals how they understand the spoken language and the comprehending within written words. So speech perception creates the ability in our brain to process speech sounds and develop cognitive skills. So speech perception involves interpreting auditory information to understand spoken language and its structure. So localization, certain parts of the brain are allocated for certain functions. Lateralization, the two hemispheres of the brain have their specialized functions. So here, localization and lateralization controls the physical and behavioral patterns in the human brain. So language production in the mind is a complex process involving various cognitive and neurological mechanisms. So language is received through a sensory input and produced through a cognitive processing in the brain. So universal grammar, a system of categories, mechanisms and constraints shared by all human language. So universal grammar is the innate language framework which influences how the human is learn a language and how they use the language worldwide. So yes, so our brief journey through word recognition, speech perception, localization and localization, language production in the mind, and concept of universal grammar. So it's a bridge that connects our human minds and cultures and ideas. So our ability to decode, effortlessly decode, understand and convey complex linguistic, and it shows the incredible power of the human brain. So I want to tell is that language is more than words. So it plays a profound role in our brain. So it shaped the understanding in the world. So lastly, I want to tell is language is not only an academic pursuit but also a cornerstone with shared human experience. This is the end of our presentation. So if you have any concerns, this is the time for you.